Welcome to Life Beyond Abortion, the podcast where we delve into the untold stories and experiences surrounding abortion. Stories often missing from everyday conversations, media reports, and even other podcast interviews. I'm your host, Melissa Ohden, the founder and CEO of the Abortion Survivors Network. As the author of You Carried Me, A Daughter's Memoir, and Abortion Survivors Break Their Silence, I've had the privilege of hearing the most powerful stories from some of the most resilient and courageous individuals. These stories and these people have profoundly transformed my life, and I believe they have the power to transform yours as well. Together, we will amplify these voices, share the truths that they illuminate, and challenge our culture to recognize what life is truly like beyond abortion. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Life Beyond Abortion. I am always blessed with amazing guests, but I tell you, you do not want to miss today's episode. I am just so honored to have a friend and a colleague for life, Sarah Zagorski-Jones, joining me for this episode. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm very fortunate to know you and to be a part of this with you.
You are a courageous woman, someone I admire in every way, both personally and professionally. But behind the scenes, there is a lot to you, like there is to everybody. So, let's just start there. What is your life beyond abortion story?
So my life beyond abortion story is really a lot of healing from the traumatic things I've gone through with my birth family and learning about loving them and knowing them and also knowing I'm one of them. And going through that process has been decades. It's taken decades of time to be where I am today with them and to have the relationships I have with my sisters, for example, now, the relationship I have with my father's family now. All gifts, I believe, that have come from healing and forgiveness, which is a big part of someone who survived abortion, right? Is forgiving the birth mother, forgiving the people that were involved in that decision, and coming to a place of just inner peace with that and accepting all the dynamics that went along with that and coming to a place of starting to really know yourself and love yourself.
And it's a tough place to be, isn't it? Out of anybody, Sarah, you have one of the longest, rockiest paths to that place of life beyond abortion. And I say that as a matter of respect. I can still remember the first time I heard you share your story, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, my experiences pale in comparison to this. And I think, though, that all of us are like that, whether it's, two abortion survivors looking at one another going, whoa, wait a minute, like, that's more intense than my story. Or, it's somebody who's listening who is going, okay, I haven't been down the path that you or Sarah has been, but I know what it's like to go through something really traumatic in my childhood, or, folks in my family that I have had to forgive. And I love that that's where you started, is that your life beyond abortion story is not what happened to you. Your life beyond abortion story is how you responded, and you continue to respond to what happened to you.
And a big step in that, is when I was, my mother passed away when I was in college, and I did have a lot of, honestly, just bitterness and unforgiveness in my heart toward her. But then I began to experience life for myself, and I began to understand the dynamics that led her to the abortion decision. And that's something I think the pro-life community is learning a lot about, that women that choose abortion are often the most vulnerable women that we have in the world today, right? They're women who have experience with abuse, they're domestic violence victims, they're sex abuse victims, they're people who have children already living in poverty. And as a child, right, I didn't have the strength or understanding, I think, to get to that place of forgiveness yet. But I'm thankful today at 35 to actually have respect and love. And actually, I'm amazed today by my birth mother and the courage she had when it really came down to the last moments, right? And that's what's given me the most internal peace as well, is to say she had so many factors going on in her life, so many people pressuring her and coercing her, that she really didn't understand what choice means, right? When we talk about reproductive choice, this is your ticket to be free. And that's what she saw abortion as. She had children living in poverty. She was living with an abusive partner. She had been running in her childhood. She ran from Honduras to America on a boat. That was her life journey. And that kind of suffering breeds an environment for someone to choose abortion, or for someone to see or to take the media's selling of abortion as, here's your easy solution. So my forgiveness has taken time, but it's also given me more love and more appreciation for her.
And for folks who don't know your story, let's go through that for a couple of minutes. I mean, I know it's a lot to unpack in a couple of minutes, but to know why it's so special that you have peace and you're still healing and you have respect and understanding for your birth mom. I think people need to know the depths to which you and your birth mom were impacted by abortion. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So my mom, she got pregnant with me out of the results of an extramarital affair because, her husband was abusive and mentally ill. And that is a fact, that those were true things. So she got involved with a physician known in the New Orleans area. And like many women who are in crisis, right, they look to that person to fix and solve and be there for them. And she actually worked for him as his maid. That was her job. And that's really the only kind of line of work she could have. But the moment of finding out she was pregnant, he abandoned that situation. He wanted nothing to do with me. And she had previous abortions in her past. And in New Orleans, there was a facility, thankfully not anymore, Gentilly Medical Clinic, that was known for helping poor minority women with their pregnancy situations, right? So she went to Dr. Akpalabi, who worked here, and he was kind of notorious in the area, and he was a similar kind of physician from what I've learned about him in my adult life to Gosnell. And in 1989, he had performed a botched abortion that left a woman with serious medical complications. And he was actually under review by Louisiana's medical board. So when my mother went to him in 1990, so it was January of 1990, he delivered me an induction style abortion at 26 and a half weeks. And when I was born, I wasn't breathing. And he informed my mom that I would be a mental vegetable and we're just going to let Sarah die here on the table. And in that moment, she changed course and said, no, I'm going to sue you if you don't get my daughter medical care. And that decision saved my life. And it also, I believe, because he was already in legal trouble, was motivating for him enough to send me to Children's Hospital's trauma birth ward, where I did recover at 26 and a half weeks. So that was the beginning. And she, at that time, already had children that she was struggling to feed. She already had all these dynamics going on inside her house, but that was a hard thing to learn from her, and a hard thing to accept. And I really believed she didn't want me and she didn't love me, but I've come to learn actually that the suffering she was experiencing led her through those doors, that led her to that moment.
You and I understand this in a way I think that other people can't sometimes. So I think you and I can say things to each other that maybe other people can't say to us. But, it was circumstances that was leading her to that place. It wasn't, quote unquote, about you, but yet it was, because it was supposed to end your life, right? So when people go, well, you can't take it personally, and we're like, kind of hard not to.
Right. And for her, I think she was a very broken woman, and I just didn't accept her. It felt to me like the excuses she gave of, I had all these things going on about my biological father and things she would say. They didn't mend my heart, right? It didn't mend my brokenness of this rejection that I felt upon learning it. However, I realized that women in these situations, understanding the abortion vulnerable woman and a woman in crisis. Women in crisis don't always make sound decisions, right? They don't make decisions that they even want many times. I really am into researching and understanding abortion coercion, for example. And the latest data from 23 from Dr. David Reardon showed that it was 70% of abortions are either unwanted abortions were coerced abortions, really kind of highlighting that this this fake idea of choice is really no choice at all for many women who choose abortion.
Well, and I'm so glad that you are unpacking some of those pieces because, again, that's what, makes people like you and I pretty important in the conversation about abortion. We can humanize the issue in a way that no one else can. And I want people to understand, I think, the part that you have even talked about of your survival. So this was an induction of labor with the intent of you not surviving it or you being left for dead. And I've walked this journey with you over the years. And for folks like us, we sort of are put in the role of having to become our own detectives and become the experts on abortion procedures. And so you haven't always understood how this happened and why.
Right. But it took a long time to understand too the practices of Dr. Akpalabi and how that dynamic worked between, a physician and my mother, seeing and also talking to my mother about it. And she would explain it to me as I love you and I wanted you. I was confused. That's what she would tell me. And I said, she's like, I made a mistake and I made these mistakes before. And that was really all I got from her. So to me, it was like, what do you mean? You made a mistake of trying to kill me? That's how you see it. That's all you look at it as. But as I've learned about the abortion industry and how they prey on women like her, I've come to understand exactly how this worked, how this worked for him. And just the fact that he believed, that I would be a mental vegetable. He took on this godship role. I know what's best for you, Lydia, and I know what's best for Sarah. And you're a woman who's never gonna talk, right? You're a woman who's never gonna speak up, right? This victim, this woman who is a victim, a repeated victim. Why would she cry out? Why would she speak up? So I've come to understand it quite well, and I've come to understand a lot about the abortion vulnerable person because of that.
I know part of your story is, finding and using your voice. And again, that's one of those things that I respect so much about you is you are now a voice for your birth mother who found her voice that day, even though her voice was probably shaking. But you use your voice in a powerful way. And so not only are you someone who survived an abortion, and you are a gifted speaker, you're a great communicator, you're a wonderful mother, right? A wonderful daughter, right? All those things. You're a great friend, but you are also the director of communications with Louisiana Right to Life. So let's talk a little bit about how your past ultimately led you to where you are, because it makes sense, right? I mean, there tends to be sort of this perception of anyone like us of like, oh yeah, they were called to that purpose.
Right.
Yes, but we also try to live pretty normal lives.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, when I moved to Chicago, when I decided to go to college in Chicago, I actually was running from my story. Honestly, I wanted nothing to do with it because it was so painful, right? Melissa, this is a painful thing to talk about every time, all the time. And especially back then when I was younger and I had less healing. So in my mind, I actually had decided I want to be a radio producer. Like I want to be behind the scenes on the radio. Like that's what I wanted to do. But yet I went through college and I lost my mother during that time, and I saw the suffering of my family, and I had been connected to Louisiana Right to Life through Benjamin Clapper, and he offered me a position here, and I felt you could say from my faith to pursue that and to step into that role, but still even then I was really excited about not getting my story involved with it. I really wanted to focus on uncovering the industry, the abortion industry's grotesque practices. I really wanted to study that and learn that and become an expert at that. And that's what I began to do. And through that, I would say I did come to a place where I began to see my own calling in exposing how demented and sick the industry is by hurting women like my mom. And that's what led me to it. It wasn't that I wanted to share this. I mean, who wants to get up and talk about something so painful? And that's how I was led throughout the process. I also had an amazing adoptive family who was also, interestingly, my adopted mom had an abortion in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she was a sidewalk counselor. And witnessing that and seeing her devotion to women, even though it was painful for her too, that was really inspiring for me. You know, it's like, this is a woman who's had an abortion and she's out at that clinic all the time with a sign, "I had an abortion, please come talk to me." And again, this is my adopted mother, so I know it's a lot, but witnessing that heroism, you know, that's taking pain and suffering and making it good somehow by reaching other people. That was inspiring for me. And I kind of made a decision. I said, this is painful for me, but it's important. It's important that women know the truth about the abortion industry. And at Louisiana Right to Life, I've had the opportunity to do that outside of my story. You know, obviously talking about pro-life laws that we've passed, obviously being involved in the process at the legislature, obviously being a part of adoption initiatives we do and baby drive distributions we do. So I've had that opportunity to do it in a different capacity that is less connected to my story, but just as much helped me grow in loving exposing the evil of the abortion industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is this dynamic process of healing and then finding and using your voice that continues to bring about healing and strength and empowerment. And I feel like that is one of those things that the abortion industry and their lobby hate the most, right? It's like, oh man, we don't want to identify abortion survivors, but we certainly don't want them to find out that there are others, right? To be supported, to be empowered and find and use their voice, because that's when they're the most dangerous to our bottom line.
Right. And they definitely don't want us to be connected together as like a unified force in sharing the truth, because that just shows how deep the deceit is within the industry. And you know, Melissa, they just deny that we even exist. They want us to erase us off the map completely because it doesn't fit their narrative, right? And I've learned that by working at Louisiana Right to Life and also hearing the other abortion survivor stories and what they've experienced and seeing the media, you'd say, blackout from those stories. When the truth of it is our stories will expose that industry and also will help women make better decisions, you know? So I know it's been a journey for me, and I know you know too that sharing your story comes at great personal cost, right? With the relationships you have and the relationships I have today with my family. I'm very thankful that my sisters are very supportive of me, and my dad's family is very supportive of me, and that's been something that's come through time and healing, and also acceptance of that we went through some painful things together, and this is something that God or my faith has led me to do. So
you have a lot of wisdom, so I'm going to tap your brain a little bit today. Chances are good that there's an abortion survivor or two that are going to, tune into this episode. What kind of wisdom would you share to an abortion survivor, regardless of where they're at in their personal experience?
I would say the first thing would to come to some acceptance that it's going to take time to heal from the trauma of finding that out, and from the trauma of that this was my mother who made this choice, and this is not the way it should have been, right? This was wrong. categorically wrong, right? It doesn't, the situation my mother was in doesn't justify what she did. I know that. And that abortion survivor needs to hear that, because while I'm empathetic and I've grown in respect and love for my birth mother, I also know what she did was categorically wrong. And no human being should be treated this way, left to die. And in your story, right, soaking in saline, so these things are never the way a human being should be treated. And it takes time to heal from that. And it's important to go through the steps of anger and to go through the steps of bitterness, even get into that bitterness place and reaching out for help. And that's why I think Abortion Survivor Networks exist, to connect you, to help you heal from this, right? And I would also say, on top of that, to reach out to your organization so that they can find out that they're not alone. A big part of it is very isolating. You feel like you're the only one in the world that's had this experience. That's not true. There are many of us. And knowing that does bring some strength and the ability to heal.
Yeah, and that ability to listen to someone else or bounce thoughts and feelings off of that person and realize, oh my gosh, I am not so badly broken that I'm not going to recover from this. Or, I don't need to feel shame and guilt for wrestling with the fact that I love my biological mother, but I know that categorically it is wrong to attempt to kill another human being, right? All of those things. Yeah, there is something so beautiful that we have been able to do in our lives. And you in particular, you and I have done some fun things together.
Yes. And you sharing your story really did help me, actually, because back then, back when I was
a baby. So
and I was a baby
you were
too.
Really a baby.
And I was really a baby, right? But the instant I met you, I felt less alone. I was like, I know there's someone else, at least one, that has something similar has happened to them, and now we know there's thousands of us, right? But back then it wasn't that. I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. You kind of heard about a couple people here and there, but it did instantly bring me a source of strength. It also gave me courage to learn more about this and to also pursue healing and pursue what would be the best thing for me, the best way to see my mother now, the best way to understand her better now. And that's really important, being connected with people that have experienced the same thing. That's why there's so many support groups around the world, right? And this is, in a sense, we do need our own because of how traumatic it is.
Yeah, it is a very unique experience that we all have. And even though people can't relate to what it's like to survive an abortion like us, I do think most listeners can relate to what it's like to have that tension that exists between, loving people and also knowing the depths of suffering, right? It's sort of like you lay out the Venn diagram and you're like, oh, there's a lot of overlap here. And I guess, I would ask you that today, Sarah, as well, as, if there's a woman like your birth mom or your mom's amazing, by the way. I love your mom. But, if there's a woman or a man who's tuning in who have been impacted by an abortion, whether the abortion was successful that, led to the child losing their life in the abortion, or, let's say the abortion wasn't successful and that ended up in a live birth like you and I, there are still thoughts and feelings and struggles for those men and women for decades to come. So what would you say to someone, a man or a woman who's been impacted by abortion?
And yeah, you're right. My adopted mom taught me a lot about that. And that's coming to the recognition that abortion is always wrong, right? And that it is the ending of a human life, successful or not. But it's also, once you get through that part, you come to this part of healing and that forgiving yourself for making that decision, and also going down the road, going back and figuring out why you made that decision. In my mother's case, she was a victim, and that's, I believe, why she made that decision. With my adopted mom, she felt pressure and abandoned. And I think really understanding why you made the decision helps you heal and forgive yourself. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't take away immediately the guilt and the shame from that. But there are many also healing ministries focused on post-abortive women and what they've experienced. Rachel's Vineyard, Silent No More. I know, Melissa, you know about all these, and I think also sometimes, like my adopted mom, using your voice to share that there is healing and forgiveness of self, and helping other people brings you healing. I mean, my adopted mom has spoken to thousands of women about abortion and shared her testimony. And I know that's brought her levels of healing and forgiveness within herself for that decision she made. So that would be my encouragement, and to not resort to, sadly, a lot of women who choose abortion become very suicidal, like my adopted mom did. Not resorting to that, but reaching out for help and support in those moments of crisis, in those moments of guilt, of what have I done. And that's the thing about abortion. When you make that decision, it's not a decision you can ever take back.
Right. As I often tell people, right, whatever you're going through right now, it feels so overwhelming, but it's temporary.
Right.
Abortion is permanent.
Right. And then also to the woman considering abortion, I would say walk into a pregnancy resource center and learn about your options. It's really hard in a moment of crisis to think this decision is the right one. But even if you are closed-minded to parenting, walk into a center and talk through your options with them before you make a decision that's so grave, right? That is permanent.
Yeah, women are worth slowing down for, right? Women are worth not having to take those abortion pills right now, like they're being told. Women are worth being supported, having someone listen to them. Mm-hmm. They're reduced, I think, so many times by the abortion industry and their lobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in this post-Roe time, the industry is very seductive in how they market abortion pills online, right? They're saying, if you don't want to consider this an abortion, just consider it a missed period pill. They're lying to women. And that's really very sad because, of course, a woman in crisis, she wants to essentially dissociate from the decision and act like it's not an abortion, right? So they feed into that. They're feeding into that and want to help her deceive herself so that she makes that decision. But slowing down and learning the facts about it first is very important.
Hear, hear. I couldn't agree more. We could talk forever, and we will off screen at some point again. We'll catch up. But for those who want to know more about you, Sarah, and your story, or, book you for speaking events, how can people find you? What are social media handles?
Sure. So you can find out all about my story on sarahzagorski.com. Also, I speak with Ambassador Speakers Bureau, and that's also on my website. My media handles are at Sarah, S-A-R-A, Zagorski, Z-A-G-O-R-S-K-I. And I'm on Instagram mostly. I'm on Facebook as well. So I love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories. And please get connected if you've survived an abortion, if you've had an abortion. Please get connected with Melissa and learn that you're not alone.
Sarah, thank you for being a guest today. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a courageous voice for life.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Life Beyond Abortion. Please follow Sarah on social media. Reach out to her, look into having her at an event. Trust me, you will be so blessed by what she has to share, both through her own experiences and her knowledge about abortion and the abortion industry. Please don't forget to like and follow, subscribe to all episodes of Life Beyond Abortion, and of course, follow us on social media as well to stay up on all of these courageous voices that show life beyond abortion.
Life Beyond Abortion is a podcast presentation of the Herzog Foundation. The views and opinions on the show are those of the host and her guest, and not necessarily those of the Herzog Foundation. You can find out more about Melissa's work at melissaohden.com or by following her on Instagram at melissaohden. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode of Life Beyond Abortion.